going to have each panelist share, what's one big do that you would recommend, anything related to resumes, cover letters, or interviews, and one big don't. And try to do something really unique so that, no one repeats. Go.
So I'm not formally in HR as my fellow panelists are, but I've been hiring people, dozens of people for almost 15, 20 years now, which just dated myself. There you go. So I've seen lots of cover letters, resumes. I'm in the middle of hiring for 6 positions. I've hired 3. I have 3 more to go to fill up my 2 teams. And I would say a do, from my perspective, is always, this is probably not rocket science, but not many people do it, which is make a very personal connection to the organization and the job that you're applying for. So tell me why you want to work at Glisten. Tell me why you want to work where I work. And more than just telling me, yeah, it's great, sounds like a wonderful opportunity. I want to hear that you understand the mission of the organization, that you've thought about how that mission connects to the work and your skill sets, and just play that out in a cover letter. I would say don't put the wrong organization down on your cover letter. And many of those this last few months where it was clear someone was just copying and pasting and forgot to actually paste. And that's I look at that one sentence and I hit delete right away.
Okay. I have my do is, I should start with my don't. One time we received a life-size cutout
Wow.
of the applicant, along with a handwritten cover letter and resume kind of stapled to the full-size cutout.
Wow.
Yeah, don't. That didn't work. But I would just say keep it simple. Think about yourself. Think about who you are, what it is that you'd like to do. You read a job description from head to toe, but what's more important is if you can match yourself to the job itself. And you'll find that even in the interview, it'll work better because you kind of know what you're talking about and you kind of know what it is that you want. So I would say personalize and just not use a canned version of a cover letter, of course, because you find that you'll have the wrong hiring manager or the wrong company. I've seen that lots of times. Just the basics, I guess, and just stay true to yourself and you'll get there.
For do, I would say post cover letter resume interview is really show your follow-up skills with a thank you. A lot of people tend to forget that, and I've seen that even more so in the last couple of years. And there's really no excuse for it now. I mean, even if you want to say you're a digital, top-notch digital person, there's still email. You can just send a thank you. Even if it's a tweet, if you're, on that level with the recruiter or hiring manager. For the don't, I'd kind of tap onto what you were saying. Don't be crazy. Be memorable. Do something. If you want to do the handwritten thank you, or you want to definitely reference something during your meeting, but definitely make it certain that something stood out to you, and you remember that with the recruiter or hiring manager.
So for my don't, I like to make candidates feel very comfortable during the interview, and sometimes they get so comfortable that they start to speak negatively about the companies or positions that they've been in and the people that they've worked with. And as comfortable as you are, definitely don't do that. It just really projects the wrong image, and it tells, it can tell a lot about you personally. For the do, definitely important to know the history and the culture of the organization that you want to work for. If you see a job, for example, and you're like, that's the job that I want, that is exactly what I want to do, go online and research that company and see if that's what actually fits your personality as well, because that's going to be the work environment that you are in. So it has to be a good match for you and the company.
Now, we have heard of, the taste of some of the horror stories that, you guys may have come across when looking to hire someone, but what about, someone that had a really great positive effect on you, whether it was the way they interviewed or their resume or their cover letter that really stood out to you? Maybe they didn't get hired, but it's still something you think about to this day. For instance, whenever I'm hiring someone and I get a resume that's not in Microsoft Word or pre-made template, but something that they actually designed in Photoshop or InDesign, with just a really awesome font, and just really clear and very concise, just really makes a big impact to me.
So I would say, so the best question I've ever been asked in an interview by a candidate, this sort of answers this question. I actually did end up hiring this person, not just because of the question, but the question actually helped. So at the end of the interview, it was an hour-long interview with me, and at the end of it she asks, now that we've talked for the last hour or so, and you've got to know me better, what red flags do you have about me in this role? What are you worried about as you sit here? And no one had ever, and I've interviewed hundreds of people, no one's ever asked me that question before or since, and I thought it was a fantastic question because she was clearly paying attention to our conversation. She probably caught on that I was a little hesitant in some of the areas of her skills because I was asking, sort of probing to find out more. And I thought it was a great question, and I told her honestly what I was worried about, and so we ended the interview, and she followed up with an email the next day and said, I heard what you said about the things you're worried about. I think I can solve those red flags for you, and here's how. And she, in her email, talked about how she could address those weaknesses, and I thought that was amazing. This person has clearly thought about the job, thought about themselves in the role, understands their weaknesses, which is a really important thing for all of us to understand, where we're weak so we can get better. And she was laying out before she was even offered the job how she would go about improving those skills. And for me, that was amazing. So that to me has been the one that really stood out through all those interviews I've done.
Okay, in my experience, because I come from the creative world, I look for things that are beyond just the actual work experience. So you might be a chef, or you might have some kind of yoga skills or something that you enjoy doing. I look for a match because the manager I might be trying to match you with might have a similar interest, or the group might have a similar interest, or we might have a project coming up where you have that kind of experience. So I look for a unique skill set, or a unique extracurricular activity, or a unique group that you might belong to, as long as it's relevant to the job that you're applying to. I'm not sure if a lot of people give that advice usually, but
It's not the one that I hear a lot. How would you go about kind of presenting that kind of unique skill set?
it's the part of the bottom, so relevant experience or interests. And just very simple. You don't really have to get into it, but it's just an idea for me to understand who you are and what you're all about beyond your wonderful work experience. It helps me to understand what a well-rounded person. And for example, we at the Advertising Research Foundation, we hired a research intern, and she's a musician in her spare time. And our people have other interests, after hours, that kind of thing. And it turned out that we had the person who was hiring has the same interests, that kind of thing. So it can be kind of a surprise where the match comes.
No, I'm always really impressed when, because I too also have that listed like additional relevant experience, including FindSpark. And for me, it's really interesting when someone loves cooking. But they're not just a cook, they run their own side catering business, and they run a blog, and it kind of shows this entrepreneurial spirit.
Yes.
But I have also seen, in addition, just kind of the list of like traveler, pug lover, loves the color blue, and
It should be an accomplishment, or it should be accomplishment oriented within your interest. So pug lover, no, but maybe let's say you volunteer with dogs, and with kids and dogs, or that kind of thing. So something relevant, but it shows your interest, and also it's a good kind of volunteer experience and additional experience beyond the workplace.
I think one of the things that still stands out to me is when someone can really brand themselves. I think that's something that's coming across nicely, and just having a solid visual across cover letter, resume, if you have a website, really integrating all of those visuals together and having a strong presence of who you are within that visual. That's always something that stands out to me, and you know, in the creative space also, if you're going to be a brand ambassador for our company, we want to know that you're going to be able to brand yourself, or vice versa.
So in being in hospitality, you can usually teach the job fairly easily, but you can't always teach personality. And so you have to look for that candidate that has genuine care for the guest or client, as well as their coworkers. And in one of my searches and looking for an assistant director of finance, looking through a lot of resumes with how they help save money with budgets and numbers, and it's pretty, concrete on that. So I was looking for somebody who could show me their personality through their resume more that would stand out. And so one of the resumes that I did receive had a candidate who explained how they like to team build within their department, as well as others, and then how they cared about the career progression of their coworkers, of their coworkers that were under them, right? So I thought that really stood out, and I liked how they weaved that into the resume and cover letter, because it told me more about their personality than just all of the financial aspects that they were very good at. And so I was very excited to meet with them even before they came to the interview, because I felt like I knew them a little bit more on a personal level.
Cover letters, because nowadays, sometimes your resume is set as an email attachment or forwarded on to someone. So, and I know way back when I was starting to look for a job for the first time, my cover letter was actually a separate document and really well, formatted, very lengthy. It was kind of novel. And past years, whenever required positions, it's changed to like a short little email that's like super brief, 2 or 3 sentences, which is kind of a little bit detrimental to people who might be changing careers or transitioning to kind of show off that personality. So does anyone have any thoughts on, the need for a cover letter, what's best to put in it, or maybe other ways to kind of show, your interest, especially if you're changing your career from, say, finance to hospitality?
So I think, for me anyway, cover letters are really important. It's your chance to tell your story in a way that's not going to be on the resume. The resume is sort of more of a factual listing of your accomplishments and the impact you've had in organizations, but I want to hear your story. And I want to hear it in prose, and I want to see it written out. And again, it's a place for me to see that you have actually thought about the job, thought about your experience and how it relates. I've seen folks who are switching careers before apply for jobs that may not be sort of the perfect fit in sort of the traditional sense, but the best cover letters are the ones that show me that you thought about how your skill set translates. So you could have spent 10 years in technology and now you're looking to do international nonprofit work. They sound like very different areas, obviously, but there's a lot going on in technology internationally. So how do you translate your skill set in technology, your experience, and say, look, I know this space, the tech space, I can translate that knowledge into what you're doing as a nonprofit or as a foundation looking to fund projects. Think about that connection and just sort of explain it. I think the cover letter is a great way to do that. But it's a lot easier for someone to look at a resume and say, oh no, they're not qualified, I'm just going to overlook it. But if you could tell me about that, you tell me your story and how you thought about it and how those pieces fit, and there are more fits than you probably realize in your skill set transferring over, that's really valuable.
Yeah, the cover letter, I find that it shouldn't regurgitate your resume. So focus on a few things in your resume that match the job opportunity, and mostly skill set oriented. And if you choose those couple of things and use it as an intro and not really a long drawn out story, it leads me to those items on the resume. And I'm scanning the resume really for skill set to see if there is a match for a job. You might be in finance and you're trying to become maybe a group creative coordinator or something like that. You know, I'm looking for the skill set, and once you can give me an idea of those kinds of things on your resume, use the cover letter for that purpose, it works.
Great. I would think if you are transitioning to a different industry or discipline, you definitely had some kind of passion related to it. So I would probably use your resources, capitalize on any initiatives that you've taken, you know, to learn about that industry or that you already have participated in from hobbies or interests outside of your work. That would also kind of leverage what you can bring to the company and what you like, your personal passion that you can bring to it.
I would say, first of all, definitely keep it brief. Don't let it run on for a page or more than a page. And then translate the skills that you have learned into the skills that are necessary for that next opportunity, whether or not it's in the same industry. It's really important to highlight that and to really showcase yourself and make me want to look at your resume next.
All right, so we have the resume, we have the cover letter, they love you, they want to meet you in person, and we talked a little bit earlier about, you know, branding yourself and kind of making yourself your own brand. And I think there's never a better opportunity when you go in for the interview. So in terms of that, it's also kind of the make or break, because if you're almost too personal or too comfortable, you can kind of, you know, unknowingly kind of ruin your chances. So for an interview, I mean, what's the best way to present yourself? I mean, you know, what's the best way to present yourself in terms of what you might be wearing or the conversations you choose, being prepared or being over too prepared? Because I think that sometimes and I used to be like this when I was much younger, I was too prepared, so I wasn't able to be, you know, myself and show my personality and have the conversation flow.
So don't show up in workout clothes. Sounds obvious, you'd be surprised. No, I think that, so how you present yourself, I mean, we all have a personal brand, right, whether we realize it or not. And that's based on how we present ourselves, how we talk about certain things, how we show up clothing-wise. You know, you might be applying for a job in an organization, so like, listen, it's a pretty laid-back culture. Folks, you know, often wear jeans most days. It's not overly formal, but if you're coming to interview, you shouldn't dress like that. That's the culture, but you need to present yourself as, this is a professional job interview. I want to make a really good impression. I'm going to dress the part, and that's a sort of, and also I think personally that when you dress up, you kind of feel good, so it makes you feel a little more comfortable as well, I think. And then I also, one of the big things that folks always have a tough time with, I think, is showing your personality. I've had some folks who didn't get jobs on my teams, and they've asked me, what could I do differently next time, or what was it that held you back? And I've said to them, I couldn't figure out your personality. You were so overly prepared and so giving me the exact right answer that I had no idea what your personality was like. And part of the interview process for me is figuring out, is this person going to fit in the culture of my team and my organization? If I have no sense of your personality, then I can't answer that question. And that's a difficult challenge for me if you're going to hire somebody.
I would agree, dress the part. Research the culture of the organization, understand which department you will be interviewing with. Again, from the creative world, you come in with a suit, it can be a little bit extreme, but presentable is very important because you just have to make a good first impression. What was the other?
I think just, you know, ways of how you can show your own personal brand, especially
Yes.
when you're interviewing.
Yes.
And maintain the fine line between being professional and personable, but not too personable where it gets awkward.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I would say I've been encouraging this. Be yourself. Let the interviewer lead you in. You'll kind of know. Keep it simple. I mean, you kind of know. You can be very nervous within an interview, but if you stay true to yourself and think about what it is that you want to project, so that you can secure what it is that you need. I find that just staying comfortable is what works.
I think one of the things none of us really likes to talk about, but is definitely literally in the air, is don't over perfumize yourselves.
That's a good one.
You know, sometimes, you know, going into an interview and it can be distracting, and that's something we definitely don't want to do. You don't want to take away from your skill set, from your personality, because maybe I love your perfume, my hiring manager might hate it, but that's something that I would definitely say is a no-no.
I would go with the basics that are sometimes forgotten because you are so over-prepared and you want to give the right answer for everything. So smiling, eye contact. I have interviews where they're saying all the right things, but they're looking, you know, they're looking somewhere else, and I'm like, I'm right here. Who are you talking to? So just really being comfortable and confident, but not too confident that you're overly talking about all of your accomplishments and not sharing what you did as a team. So really just the basics: eye contact, smile. Remember that while you're giving all the right answers.
All right, the interview wrapped up, and you were professional, yet personable, and you had a nice conversation about how you both love pugs, and it went great. But now it's time for the follow-up. I know that, you know, there's a lot of recommendations of, you know, send a handwritten note, follow up in a timely manner. I think if you have any, you know, advice or kind of like, I don't know, more examples of something you've seen that's worked well in terms of the follow-up. Like, for instance, I actually stole this from a girl that I was hiring to be an intern. We interviewed her, it was a group interview, and she, within the next day, found a way to figure out what all of our email addresses were at work. We didn't give her her cards, but she figured it out and gave us all like a personal little email note that like even referred to what we talked about or our individual experience that really just blew us all away. And I recently did that when I have gone on a recent interview where I, you know, did some sleuthing to figure out, you know, what their email addresses were, and it did make a big impact.
Following up and personalizing thank yous to the folks you've met with. And, you know, the thing is, when you get one person's email address, you can figure out everybody else's, right? Because it follows the same pattern. So first name, dot, last name. It's not rocket science.
Yeah.
And it's also, you can Google everything in this world, but you can figure it out. So saying, oh, I don't have your email is not really a valid excuse anymore, right? Because you can get it. I would also say that, so two things in terms of the follow-up. One, certainly the thank you and the personalized thank you, not the 1 to 6, 7 people at the same time. But also, they're going to be, and we've all done this, I've done this many times, you go through an interview, you feel really good, you come out and you go, man, I wanted to mention this and I forgot to mention it. You still have an opportunity in the follow-up. So I would suggest two things. One, I'm sure you have questions that you didn't get a chance to ask because you've had this conversation, now you're digesting the conversation. So I would say in your follow-up, ask those questions. You know, I was just wondering, just clarity on this thing, or what are you guys doing here, that kind of thing. But then also, feel free to say, you know, I wanted to mention this, but we ran out of time. This is something else I've done in my experience that I think relates. Here's how I think it relates, that kind of thing. It's for me, as receiving that, it's showing that you're thinking about it, you've processed the conversation, you're very interested in the job, you're thinking about how you could fit into this role. I think those things really go a long way. They have for me in the past when I've gotten those from other potential candidates or candidates for potential hire.
Yeah, I would agree. I find that sometimes a cover letter would just, a thank you letter would just go to the HR manager or the recruiter. Very important to reach out to everyone that you've interviewed with. I even find that that person will drive the process. Hey, did you get that note? Did you see? I really want her here. And then again, think of something personal from the interview for each person that you remember discussing and highlight that. You know, it doesn't have to be a lot. Just remember to highlight that special thing and that stands out.
One of the best follow-up thank yous I ever got actually was an art director that she and I were just kind of shooting the breeze during the interview, and we talked about an app that would be really cool to have, and she took the opportunity to design her thank you note, like a mock-up of the app, and said it should be available on iTunes or something like that, and it was really cool. Like, she took the time to actually customize something. So I would definitely say again, keep it, something personal and something memorable, and not a cardboard cutout. And also use it as an opportunity to ask for next steps or potential timelines for next steps. And to keep the dialogue open that way, and yeah.
Yeah, basically I would just say recap on your conversation, keep it personalized, either email or handwritten note. But definitely make sure that you do reach out to everyone that you've interviewed with. And then, yeah, again, use that opportunity for follow-up or any questions that you might have, but really try to connect in that last final note that you're sending.